In 30 minutes, there's highlights of the Canadian Grand Prix from Montreal, before which Magnus Magnusson chairs the last semi-final of Mastermind.
Hello and welcome to the penultimate program in this year's series of Mastermind. And for this, the last of the semi-finals, we are again in the Science Museum in London. Now, as always, this program is reserved for the highest scoring runners-up from the first round. Now, strictly on scores and passes, we should have had 5 semi-finalists in this program, but unfortunately, one of the qualifiers is unable to take part, so we have the more traditional quartet to do battle for the last place in the final. And they are a freelance editor and proofreader from Weymouth and Dorset, a carpenter from Wingate in County Durham, a retired bank manager from Earl Shilton in Leicestershire, and a former dispatch clerk from Hendy in Dyfed. Now tonight, their specialised subjects, which must be different from those chosen in the first round, are the British submarine, the history of the Derby, English heraldry, and the First World War. So may I have the first semi-finalist, please? Your name, please?
Michael Forder.
Occupation?
Freelance editor and proofreader.
In the first round, you took the works of Satchmo Armstrong. What is your chosen subject this time?
The British submarine.
Michael Forder, you have 2 minutes on the British submarine, starting... Now, what was the main surface propulsion system in British K-class submarines?
Steam turbine.
Correct. What was unprecedented about the appointment of Lieutenant Edward Young to command HMS Storm in 1943?
He was the first RMVR officer.
Correct. Under what name was HMS Thetis sailing when she was finally sunk in March 1943?
Thunderbolt.
Correct. What was the profession of George William Garrett, who devised a submarine resurgam in 1879?
He was a parson.
Correct. What was the first British submarine to be fitted with experimental diesels in place of petrol engines?
D2.
No, the A-13. In the First World War, in which sea did Commander Max Horton operate with such success that the Germans sometimes called it Horton Sea?
The Baltic.
Correct. Who was in command of submarine B-11 when she negotiated the Dardanelles and sank the Turkish warship Mesudia?
Holbrook.
Correct. What was the designation of the submarine modified to carry an aircraft which was lost by accident off Portland in 1932?
M2.
Correct. Which British submarine was captured in the Kattegat by the Germans in May 1940?
Seal.
Correct. Who was the captain of HMS Upholder who was awarded the Victoria Cross in 1941?
Wanklin.
Correct. What was the title of the group of submarines commanded by Captain George Simpson, which operated from Malta during 1941 and 42?
They were the 10th.
Correct. What was the role of HMS Medway, whose loss in June 1942 was of special significance to British submarines?
Depot ship the Thrustula.
What was the main gun armament of T-class submarines of the Second World War?
4-inch.
Correct. In 1942, which British submarine was briefly commanded by Commander Gerald Wright of the United States Navy?
The Seraph.
Correct. What caused the loss of HMS Truculent in the Thames estuary in January 1950?
She was in collision with the Divina.
Correct. 2 submarines designed in the 1950s were fitted with experimental high-test peroxide engines. One was the Explorer, which was the other?
Excalibur.
Correct. Who was the captain of HMS Dreadnought, Britain's first nuclear submarine when she was commissioned in 1963?
Watson.
No, Samburn. What name has been given to the first British Trident submarine, which was recently rolled out at Barrow-in-Furness?
Vanguard.
Correct. In May 1982, what type of torpedo did Commander Reeford Brown select in his attack on the General Belgrano? And you may answer.
A Mark 8 2-star.
Is correct. At the end of that round, Michael Forder, you have scored 17 points and no passes. Thank you very much. And our second semi-finalist, please. Your name, please.
Peter Todd.
Occupation.
Carpenter.
In the first round, you took the life of St. Cuthbert. What is your chosen specialised subject for the semi-final?
History of the Derby.
Peter Todd, you have 2 minutes on the history of the Derby, starting... Now, Diomed, the first Derby winner, and Eleanor, the first filly to win the race, were both owned by which jockey club member?
Sir Charles Bunbury.
Correct. In 1865, which champion became the first French-bred horse to win the Derby and was nicknamed the Avenger of Waterloo?
Gladiateur.
Correct. Which future Prime Minister first called the Derby the Blue Ribbon of the Turf?
Disraeli.
Correct. Over what distance was the first Derby run in 1780?
1 mile.
Correct. Two full brothers by Waxy out of Penelope won the Derby. One was Whalebone in 1810. Who was the other?
Whisker.
Correct. Why did Cadlan have to race a total of 3 miles for his Derby victory in 1828?
It was a dead heat and he had a run-off.
Correct. In what unusual weather conditions did Bloomsbury win the 1839 Derby?
Snowstorm.
Correct. In 1844, when the horse described as Running Rain was exposed as a 4-year-old, which colt was awarded the race?
Orlando.
Correct. Which owner had his colours of black with a white cap carried to victory in the race by Sansovino, Hyperion and Watling Street?
Lord Derby.
Correct. In the Commons in 1847, who moved the motion that the House should adjourn for Derby Day?
George Bentinck.
Correct. Which filly travelled from Yorkshire to win the Derby in 1857 and at stud produced the Derby winner Blair Athol?
Blink Bunny.
Correct. Which champion jockey won his 5th Derby in Ormond in 1886 but committed suicide later that year?
Fred Archer.
Correct. What was the name of the King's horse which was brought down by the suffragette Emily Davison at Tattenham Corner in the 1913 Derby?
Amna.
Correct. Which colt started favourite for the 1928 Derby but was mobbed on his way to the start and finished unplaced behind Felstead?
Fairway.
Correct. Which of Steve Donohue's 6 Derby winners was named after a character in Charles Dickens's Dombey and Son?
Captain Cuttle.
Correct. The Derby winning jockeys Ray Johnson, Scobie Breesley and George Moore were born in which country?
Australia.
Correct. In 1923, which thriller writer and racing journalist organised the first press club luncheon on the eve of the Derby?
Wallace.
Correct. The Noel Merlis trained colt Punteriscio was anti-post favourite for the 1961 Derby, but why was he unable to run?
It was got at the
He was nobbled. Correct. Who was the owner of Shergar when he won the 1981 Derby by a record 10 lengths? And you may answer.
Aga Khan.
Aga Khan is right. And at the end of that round, Peter Todd, you have scored 19 points and no passes. Thank you very much. And our third semi-finalist, please. Your name, please.
Drusilla Armitage,
Occupation.
retired bank manager.
In the first round, you took the history of Leicester from the Norman conquest to 1900. What is your chosen subject this time?
English heraldry.
Miss Armitage, you have 2 minutes on English heraldry, starting now. Pellet, gunstone, and ogress are all names for a roundel of which tincture?
Black.
Correct. In black and white depictions of arms, which heraldic colour is represented by horizontal hatching lines?
Azure.
Correct. Which type of heraldic crown, common in civic heraldry, is masoned and embattled?
Mural.
Correct. For decorative purposes only, the lozenge of an unmarried lady is sometimes ensigned at the top with what specific detail?
A true lover's knot.
Correct. Which English king first quartered the fleur-de-lis of France with the royal arms of England to symbolise his claim to the French throne?
Edward III.
Correct. In the 14th century, against which family did the Scroops successfully contest the celebrated heraldic legal case known as the Suit of the Bend Or?
Grosvenors.
Correct. What is a cadency mark on a shield showing that it bears the arms of a 4th son?
Martlet.
Correct. In 1704, which architect and dramatist was created Clarenceux King of Arms?
Pass.
By what name were the county surveys of arms known, which were carried out by the heralds in the 16th and 17th centuries?
Visitations.
Correct. What appear on the coronets of dukes, marquises and earls, but are absent from those of viscounts and barons?
Strawberry leaves.
Correct. Which museum in Oxford is named after a 17th century English herald?
Ashmolean.
Correct. 2 queens adopted the motto Semper Eadem under their royal coat of arms. Elizabeth of England was one. Who was the other?
Anne.
Correct. If the border of a shield is described or blazoned as verdoy, with what particular ornamentation is it charged?
Fleur-de-lis.
No, it's vegetation in general. What is the name of the rare armorial tincture which is of an orange or tawny colour?
Tenay.
Correct. Which heraldic term is used in blazon to describe a shield that is strewn or charged with little drops of a particular colour?
Gutte.
Correct. On the accession of which British monarch was the escutcheon of Hanover dropped from the royal coat of arms?
Victoria.
Correct. What is the name of the heraldic fur which shows gold ermine tails or ermine spots against a black background?
Peen.
Correct. Which heraldic term meaning swimming describes a fish shown horizontally or fess-wise on a shield? And you may answer.
Naiant.
Is correct. And at the end of that round, Miss Armitage, you have scored 16 points. You pass them just one. The celebrated architect and dramatist who was created Clarenceux King of Arms in 1704 was Sir John Vanbrugh. Drusilla Armitage, thank you very much. And our fourth semi-finalist, please. Your name, please.
Chris Wright,
Occupation.
former dispatch clerk.
In the first round, you took the Second World War in Asia and the Pacific. What is your chosen specialized subject for the semi-final?
History of World War I.
Christopher Wright, you have 2 minutes on the history of World War I, starting. Now, what were first used on a large scale by the British at the Battle of Cambrai in 1917?
Tanks.
Correct. Who was Commander-in-Chief of the British Expeditionary Force sent to France in August 1914?
French.
Correct. Where in the Atlantic was Admiral von Spee's squadron destroyed in December 1914?
Falklands.
Correct. In 1914, by what means did the Germans discover Russian plans and unit positions before the Battle of Tannenberg?
Sending wireless messages in clear.
Correct. What name was given to the German offensive designed in 1905, which involved a wheeling attack into France through neutral Belgium at the start of a war?
Schlieffenplan.
Correct. In the spring of 1915, who succeeded Sir Horace Smith-Dorrien in command of the British Second Army?
Plumer.
Correct. Which key Verdun fort fell to the Germans without a shot being fired on February the 25th, 1916?
Douaumont.
Correct. During which battle in September 1915 did the British first use poison gas on a large scale?
Lose.
Correct. Which cape at the southern tip of the Gallipoli Peninsula was the scene of the Allied landings on April the 25th, 1915?
Helles.
Correct. Which river valley in northeast Italy was the scene of 11 costly Italian offensives from 1915 to 17?
Isonzo.
Correct. At which village on the river Tigris were General Townshend's Anglo-Indian Division forced to surrender in April 1916?
Cut.
Correct. Who commanded the German High Seas Fleet at the Battle of Jutland in 1916?
Shia.
Correct. Which geographical feature was taken by the Canadian Corps on the first day of the Battle of Arras in April 1917?
Vimy Ridge.
Correct. What command arrangement resulted from the Inter-Allied Conference held at Toulon in March 1918?
Foch. CNC.
Correct. Who commanded the German forces in German East Africa throughout the war?
Leto Vorbeck.
Correct. What type of civilian transport helped supply troops for the French Sixth Army at Marne in September 1914?
Taxis.
Correct. In a clearing near which village in the forest of Compiègne was the armistice signed in November 1918?
Pass.
What name, after that of the commander of the Southwest Front, is given to Russia's major offensive launched in June 1916?
Brusilov.
Correct. Who was the leading British fighter ace of the war, credited with 73 victories before
Manak.
being shot down in July 1918?
Manak.
Is correct. Who called August the 8th, 1918? I've started, so I'll finish. Who called August the 8th, 1918, on which the Battle of Amiens began, the Black Day of the German Army?
Ludendorff.
Ludendorff is right. At the end of that round, Chris Wright, you have scored 19 points and 1 pass. You passed on just one. The name of the clearing near the village in the forest of Compiègne, where the armistice was signed in November 1918, was Retonde. Chris Wright, thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the first round of specialist subjects. A remarkably high-scoring round it was, too. Let us glance at the scores. And in fourth place, with 16 points, is Drusilla Armitage. In third place with 17 points is Michael Forder, but there is a tie at the top at this halfway stage on 19 points between Peter Todd and Chris Wright. On now to the second round, the general knowledge round. And let me remind you of the rules of Mastermind, that if there is still a tie at the end of the second round, then the number of passes will be taken into consideration, and the contender with the fewer or fewest passes will be adjudged the winner. And I should just remind you that Peter Todd had no passes, and Chris Wright had 1 pass. Now, as always, I'll be calling up the contenders in the ascending order of their first round scores. So first of all, please may I have Drusilla Armitage. She's a retired bank manager from Leicester, lives in Earl Shilton in Leicestershire, worked in the international branch with Lloyds for many years, scored 16 points on English heraldry, to be lying in fourth place at the end of the first round. Your general knowledge questions are starting now. Who's usually credited as the author of a number of sonnets addressed to the so-called Dark Lady?
Shakespeare.
Correct. In a church, what is the rood for which the rood scene is named?
The cross.
Correct. In needlework, what is gui pure?
A sort of edging, thick cord edging.
No, it's lace, actually.
Yeah.
Of which national industry was Sir Peter Parker the chairman from 1976 to 83?
Coal.
No, British Rail. What is the most common name of the seabird Fratercula arctica, noted for its large, colourful bill, sometimes called the sea parrot?
Puffin.
Correct. Which annual register of ships, first published in 1760, gives detail of the world's ocean-going merchant ships?
Lloyd's.
Correct. The ancient Phoenician cities of Tyre and Sidon are on the coast of which modern Middle Eastern country?
Israel.
No, the Lebanon. On British coins, what do the letters FD stand for?
Defender of the Faith.
Correct. Which title did Queen Victoria acquire under the Royal Titles Act of 1876?
Empress of India.
Correct. In music, what Italian name, meaning tale, is given to a concluding passage of a work which is an addition to a standard form?
Coda.
Correct. The Carriers Company is one of the old city livery companies. With what material does a carrier work?
Leather.
Correct. Which German city in the River Elbe, devastated by Allied bombing during the Second World War, is capital of the land of Saxony?
Dresden.
Correct. Which influential writer, living in seclusion at Amherst in Massachusetts until her death in 1886, had the majority of her poems published posthumously?
Pass.
In 1632, which British king knighted the artist Anthony van Dyck?
Charles I.
Correct. What Portuguese name, meaning act of faith, was given to the religious ceremony at which sentences of the Spanish Inquisition were decreed?
Fellow de Se.
No, auto de fe.
Auto de fe.
What was the Roman name for the goddess of the dawn?
Aurora.
Correct. In textiles, what general term describes weaves which produce perceptible diagonal ridges across the fabric used for tweed, serge, and other cloths? And you may answer.
No, it's gone.
And at the end of that round, Drusilla Armitage, your score has gone up to 27 points. You passed on to the American writer who lived at Amherst in seclusion until her death in 1886, had a poem published posthumously, was Emily Dickinson. And in textiles, that general term describing weaves with the perceptible diagonal ridges is twill. Drusilla Armitage, thank you very much. And now Michael Forder, please. He's a freelance editor and proofreader, retired seaman, lives in Weymouth in Dorset, comes from Surrey originally, scored 17 points on the British submarine to be lying only in third place. The target you have to aim at now is 27. Your general knowledge questions are starting. Now, in the army, what is furlough?
Leave.
Correct. Which drink is added to scotch to make a whiskey mac?
Ginger ale.
No, ginger wine. Imperial, spade, and goatee are all styles of what?
Beard.
Correct. What is the French name for the Strait of Dover?
La Manche.
No, Pas-de-Calais. Which organisation for the extension and diffusion of scientific knowledge was founded in London in 1799?
Royal Society.
No, the Royal Institution. In which debtor's prison in Southwark was Dickens's Little Dorrit born?
Marshalsea.
Correct. The letters AM designating the hours before noon stand for which two Latin words?
Anti-meridian.
Correct. Which American-born painter sued for damages after Ruskin accused him of flinging a pot of paint in the public's face?
Whistler.
Correct. In 1281, a typhoon named Kamikaze, or Divine Wind by the Japanese, scattered the invading fleet of which Mongol emperor of China?
Kubla Khan.
Is right. Which public school at Crowthorne in Berkshire was founded in 1853 primarily to educate the sons of deceased officers?
Pangbourne.
No, Wellington College. Which Gilbert and Sullivan opera has the alternative title, The Lass That Loved a Sailor?
HMS Pinafore.
Correct. In the Old Testament, who was a mighty hunter before the Lord, whose name is applied to any great hunter?
Nimrod.
Correct. What was the former name of the Turkish city and seaport of Izmir?
Smyrna.
Correct. Which French novelist wrote L'Oeuvre, published in 1886, which described the career of an early Impressionist painter?
Zola.
Correct. In 1773, in which ship did Captain James Cook lead the first European expedition to cross the Antarctic Circle?
Endeavour.
No, the Resolution. Name one of the two MPs who were expelled from the Labour Party last December for alleged links with militant tendency.
Pass.
Which viral disease with a high mortality rate is named after the Nigerian village where it was first reported in 1969?
AIDS.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
AIDS.
No, it was Lassa fever. And at the end of that round, Michael Forder, you two have scored 27 points. You passed on just one. The two MPs who were expelled from the Labour Party last December for alleged links with militant tendency were Terry Fields and Dave Nellist. Michael Forder, thank you very much. And now Peter Todd, please. He is a carpenter from Durham, living now in Wingate in County Durham. Scored 19 points with no passes on the history of the Derby to be in joint first place. The target you have to aim at is still 27. And your general knowledge questions are starting now. Who designed the C5 electric car and the recently launched the Zyke battery-powered bicycle?
Clive Sinclair.
Correct. Which murderer and body snatcher who, with William Hare, sold bodies for dissection in Edinburgh was hanged in 1829?
Burke.
Correct. What name derived from the title of a Hindu god is given to a massive heavy lorry?
Juggernaut.
Correct. Which town in North Yorkshire stands on the estuary of the River Esk?
Whitby.
Correct. In the book of Genesis, Ishmael's mother was Hagar. Who was his father?
Abraham.
No, Abram is right. In astronomy, what Latin name meaning mist or vapor is given to a cloud of interstellar gas or dust?
Nebula.
Correct. What is the name of the great triangle of semi-desert in southern Israel between the Sinai Peninsula and the Araba Valley?
The Negev Desert.
Correct. In which London house is a Wellington Museum?
Apsley House.
Correct. Who became the first Prime Minister of India when the country became independent in 1947?
Nehru.
Correct. In early British history, who were the Dobunai, the Parisii, and the Regnai?
Pass.
Which Austrian composer, Symphony number 8 in B minor, begun in 1822, is known as the Unfinished Symphony?
Schubert.
Schubert is right. What is the common name of the bird Columba palumbus, sometimes known as the cushat-doo or cushy-doo?
The dove. Ringdove.
Is right. Harold I, called Harold Finehair, was the first ruler to claim sovereignty over the whole of which Scandinavian country?
Norway.
Is right. In February, which former shipbuilding town was granted city status by the Queen to mark the 40th anniversary of her accession?
Sunderland.
Is right. Thomism is a philosophical and theological system developed by which 13th century Dominican friar and his followers?
Aquinas.
Correct. Which American president proclaimed Sir Winston Churchill an honorary citizen of the United States?
Roosevelt.
No, Kennedy. Who wrote the pamphlet Common Sense, published in 1776, campaigning for the independence of the American colonies?
Paine.
Correct. Which 18th century British artist painted the Morning Walk, owned by the National Gallery in London?
Turner.
No, Gainsborough. What name is given to a surveyor's instrument for measuring horizontal and vertical angles invented by Leonard Digges?
Theodolite.
Is right. And at the end of that round, Peter Todd, you have scored 35 points. You passed on just the one about early British history. Who were the Dobunai, the Parisii, and the Regnai? They were all British tribes before the Roman invasion. Peter Todd, thank you very much. And finally, Christopher Wright, please, a former dispatch clerk with British Steel from Gorsinen, living now in Hendy in David. Scored 19 points on the history of World War I, to be in joint first place at the halfway stage. You have one pass. The target you're aiming at now is 35 and one pass. Your general knowledge questions are starting. Now, in 1920s America, a bootlegger was an illicit trader in what?
Alcohol.
Correct. Which Spanish word meaning council or committee is used in English to describe a government formed by a group after a coup d'etat?
Junta.
Correct. On the Fahrenheit scale of temperature, what is the freezing point of water?
Minus 32.
No, 32. In which city is the headquarters of the European Court of Human Rights?
Geneva.
No, Strasbourg. In 216 BC, which Carthaginian general commanded the army which defeated the Romans at Cannae?
Hannibal.
Correct. What blood relation was Erasmus Darwin, the author of Zoonomia, to Charles Darwin, who wrote On the Origin of Species?
Uncle.
No, his grandfather. In rugby union, what is the name given to the knockout competition for English clubs, formerly known as the John Player Cup?
Pilkington Cup.
Correct. The site of Custer's last stand is now preserved as a national monument in which of the United States?
Montana.
Correct. In the Old Testament, in a dream at Gibeon, to which king did God give a wise and an understanding heart?
Saul.
No Solomon. Last October, President Jean-Bertrand Aristide was overthrown in a coup in which Caribbean country?
Haiti.
Correct. Which gas is a chief constituent of fire damp which is found in coal mines?
Methane.
Correct. In a Shakespeare tragedy, who was thrice presented with a kingly crown which he did thrice refuse?
Caesar.
Correct. Which composer's Symphony number 94 in G major is popularly called the Surprise Symphony?
Haydn.
Correct. In September 1940, which liner was sunk in the Atlantic with the loss of 77 children who were en route to a safe haven in China? In Canada, I'm sorry.
Athenia.
No, the city of Benares. Which Israeli statesman who died recently shared with Anwar Sadat the 1978 Nobel Peace Prize?
Begin.
Correct. In 1400, who proclaimed himself Prince of Wales and led a major revolt against Henry IV?
Owain Glendower.
Correct. What name derived from Greek meaning union was given to the movement seeking the union of Cyprus with Greece?
Enosis.
Correct. In 1796, who was nicknamed Le Petit Caporal, or the Little Corporal, by his own soldiers?
Napoleon.
Correct. Which Macedonian ruler married Roxane, daughter of Oxyaartes, and the Persian princess Barsine?
Alexander the Great.
Correct. In which Pacific island group is Guadalcanal? And you may answer.
Solomons.
The Solomons is right. At the end of that round, Chris Wright, you have scored 34 points and no passes. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the second round, the general knowledge round, and a tremendously high-scoring and taut round it was indeed. Let us glance at the scores. And in joint third place on 27 points are Michael Forder and Drusilla Armitage. In second place on 34 points is Chris Wright. But the winner by 1 point with the high score of 35 points is a carpenter from Durham, Peter Todd. Well, our congratulations to Peter Todd, our thanks, our commiserations to the others, our thanks in particular for taking part in Mastermind this year. And so the stage is now set for the final. Peter Todd, Durham carpenter, joins Steve Williams from Solihull, Glenn Binney from Falkirk, and Richard Ford from Soho. Well, that final will take place in the Great Hall of the University of Birmingham, so do join us to discover who is to be the Mastermind champion of 1992. That's all for this week. All that it remains for me to do now is to thank the authorities here at the Science Museum in London for their tremendous kindness and hospitality to us while we've been here. So until next week, from Mastermind in the Science Museum, it's goodbye.
And the grand final of Mastermind can be seen next Sunday evening here on SSVC television.
Veda.
Dad?
I'm embalming my high school teacher. Don't sing.
That's my best friend, Veda Saltonfuss.
Veda and Thomas.
Most of the girls don't appreciate her.
I always surround myself with people who I find intellectually stimulating.
A lot of the guys are a little afraid of her.
Okay, lean forward.
But she's more fun to be around than anyone I know. This summer, though, things are changing for everyone.
You ever kissed anyone?
No. Her father just found someone.
I'm going out with Shelley. I'm very nervous.
Since the last time you dated, something happened. The sexual revolution.
Good at kissing and dancing. I'm very optimistic.
And her grandmother just lost her marbles.
It's 2:45.
No wonder Veda's acting so funny.
What we're going to do is send our vibes out into the group. Feel my aura.
I don't think I'm allowed to. I'm going to marry Mr. Bixley.
You can't marry a teacher, because then he'll give you all A's, and it won't be fair.
Dad likes her better than me.
Bingo! They say sometimes, when you get older, friends stop being friends. but not Veda and me. She'll always be my girl.
Columbia Pictures presents Dan Aykroyd, Jamie Lee Curtis, Macaulay Culkin, and introducing Anna Klumsky.
Veda, what'd you think of me?
For what?
Well, if you don't get to marry Mr. Bigfoot.
I guess.
My Girl.
I used to think a wedding was a simple affair. Boy and girl meet, they fall in love, they say I do. I was wrong. That's getting married. A wedding is an entirely different proposition. You fathers will understand. You have an adorable little girl who looks up to you and adores you in a way you could never have imagined.
Dad, I met a man in Rome, and we're getting married.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I'm engaged. I'm getting married.
Right then, I realized my day had passed. Annie, it's a little nippy out. You might want to put on a
Oh, Dad, it's okay. I'm kind of warm.
So there's a chill in the air, and you've been on a plane.
Dad, I'm fine.
Annie, it is kind of cold out.
It is?
Yeah.
All right, thanks. I'll get my jacket.
I was no longer the man in my little girl's life. Old Dad was history. But I remember seeing someone who looked like Brian's twin on America's Most Wanted.
First, the wedding of our children.
Wedding coordinator? What's a wedding coordinator?
Master and Mrs. Banks and the lovely bride.
We're going to color coordinate with the swans, right?
Swans? I have a great idea where we can have this wedding.
Where?
The steak pit.
I don't think you want the word pit on the wedding invitation.
I'm leaving.
I hope George didn't get lost up there.
He's going to be fine.
Finally, the big day arrived. The day I'd been dreading for the past 6 months. Well, actually, for the past 22 years. Before I knew it, I had to let her go.
Good, I'll just go ahead.
Touchstone Pictures presents Steve Martin, Diane Keaton, Martin Short, and introducing Kimberly Williams.
I'm told that one day I'll look back on all of this with great affection and nostalgia. I hope so.
Good night, Mr. Banks.
Drive carefully. And don't forget to fasten your condom.
Dad!
Seatbelt, I meant. Seatbelt.
Father of the bride.
And now to round off this evening's programmes, highlights of today's Canadian Grand Prix from Montreal.
With one of the most exciting finishes for years, the Monaco Grand Prix stood Formula One on its ear, as Ayrton Senna and a loose Williams wheel nut just denied Nigel Mansell a record season-opening 6th successive victory. 2 weeks later, the rivals meet again on Montreal's superb Gilles Villeneuve circuit, a hard, demanding track which tests car and driver alike and on which both Senna and Mansell have won in the past. For Senna, Canada could be good news. So far, the Williams Renault has been superior to his McLaren Honda, but now Honda have closed the power gap, and on Friday, Ayrton revelled in his extra horsepower, pole position for the first time in 7 races. For Mansell, Friday was misery. Not enough grip, reduced horsepower and heavy traffic saw him 4th on the grid. On Saturday, he was fastest in both sessions, but with the track slower, the damage was done. Mansell was not in pole position for the first time this year. In the championship, he leads Riccardo Patrese by 28 points and his chief rival, Ayrton Senna, by 38, but he can't relax. especially as Patrese, Grand Prix's most experienced driver, is ahead of Mansell on the grid and just as hungry for the championship. And Ricciardo loves Canada. Montreal is bumpy and slippery, and anyone can spin off, even Ayrton Senna. With uncertain weather and a high attrition rate, anything can happen, and maybe at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit, Lotus could come good with their superb new car. The brilliant Johnny Herbert, winner of last year's Le Mans race, starts 6th and could finish much higher. Senna first on the grid, Mansell 3rd and Patrese in between. The two Benettons of Schumacher and Brundle sandwiching Herbert's Lotus. Alesi's Ferrari 8th and Capelli's 9th. Katayama a superb 11th in his Larousse. Gabriele Tarquini is 18th for his first race in the new Fondmetal. Boutsen and Comas start a depressed 21st and 22nd in their Ligiers, and Olivier Griard's Tyrrell is last on the grid. And it's going, Senna really feeds in the power, as does Mansell. They both leap forward, and Mansell is past Patrese already. Nigel Mansell up into 2nd position, a sensational start. Patrese is 3rd, Berger is 4th, Schumacher is 5th, in 6th position it is Martin Brundle, and Mansell is already doing what he did at Monaco. He's trying to saw the McLaren in front of him in half. If he had a blade on the front of his car, he'd surely do it. But Senna has got the power, he's got superior power, and if he can get it well down, he may be able to build up a little bit of a lead. But Mansell pushing hard. You can see there's a gap developing already between the two Williams drivers. Nigel Mansell in 2nd place, Riccardo Patrese in 3rd position. Berger is challenging, and already out goes Gabriele Tarquini in the sole new GR02 Fondmetal, designed by Sergio Ridler. But never mind that, because look at the race as they come down to the hairpin. That is turn 9 for the first time. It is Senna, Mansell, Patrese, Berger.
And I think Brundle then just moved up past Johnny Herbert then into 6th place. And this was the start that Senna wanted. It was a great start by Nigel Mansell, but from 3rd on the grid it wasn't quite enough. And this is the critical thing. Senna in race trim, still no match for the Williamses in terms of speed, but he's going to make himself awfully hard to pass. He had to get to the first corner first to make a race of it. He did a tremendous job in qualifying, and when the Williamses weren't quite at their best, to get the car onto pole, and with Honda with more power and Shell with a new brew of fuel, particularly for qualifying, there was certainly more power available. But in the race, and here we see the start again, Senna got it moving absolutely on the green, but a fabulous start from Mansell from the 2nd row, but still not enough. Senna had the inside line for the first corner there.
Well, Ayrton Senna now is going to have the sort of pressure potentially for 68 laps that he had for 3 laps at Monaco, because behind him